The first time I read about neuro-linguistic programming, it was pretty confusing for me because I was seeing all those complex models and all those 15 steps of procedures, and I was not quite sure when I have a problem emotionally, psychologically, or in communication. I was not quite sure how am I supposed to use all those complex mechanics in this. And I noticed it made sense from a historical perspective to design NLP like that back in the 70s and the 80s, because the field of psychology back then and communication was mostly just philosophical debates about theorizing how this should work and what this should mean, but not much was being tested on the field. So it made sense to apply this heavily psycho-cybernetic and mathematical perception on how the mind works back then. But it also created some confusion about, we have this broad big model, and how does that apply when I feel pain mentally and I want to help myself? So if I remember correctly, in the very beginning I think I was trying to memorize literally everything, all the models. So if the switch pattern had 8 different steps, I was really trying to memorize consciously all the steps one by one, and I thought I had to replicate exactly the steps as they are being laid out in the book. Doesn't happen that way, but it took me some time to figure it out. Memorizing models like the 6-step reframing, those initial models, memorizing them step by step, that can be a good training wheel, especially if you're anxious to work with a client for real. That can be a good training wheel, but in my opinion, as soon as possible, you need to let go of the absolute models the way they were being laid out and allow yourself to improvise. Many coaches or hypnotists never really, even after 20 years, never really come to the point of trusting themselves enough to allow themselves the right to improvise and follow their intuition. Today I have learned to trust my intuition much more. Many times I pull out something from my head that I didn't even know was there, less and less as I am teaching this stuff, because now I have more concrete models of what I am doing. But like years ago, I started to improvise with clients randomly in a session, and I didn't really even know what I was talking about when I was coming at the phase of mastery. I think the very first moment I allowed myself the right to improvise and not try to follow exactly the model like it was laid out was in 2017 or 2018, I think, where so far I was almost all the time following the Robert Dilts SCORE model, the SCORE, with the symptoms, the causes, all of that. And that was basically the foundation for all of my sessions, asking the questions one by one in this order. It was providing results, but I was not really allowing myself to step out of this model sometimes. And I was sitting down on a bench with a friend of mine, and she was telling me about some problems, and not that we were in a session or anything, but just randomly like that, I jumped into some sort of NLP protocol, not really even knowing what I was doing, but intuitively I sensed she wanted some reassurance, some comfort, some sense of being at least cared for at this moment, and I just said whatever I had in mind. But I remember at some point I touched slightly with one finger her knee as I was making a point by touching her knee like this, and I only realized that later I had been doing an encore at this moment when I was talking about some positive moment of her past, and I used that encore later during that conversation when I talked about her problem, and she mentioned then how she mentally, when I was talking, saw herself dissociated from the negative events that she was talking about. I didn't even know consciously I had been setting up an encore. Just came to me intuitively. But the point is, when you allow yourself the right to improvise, you may have access to conversational or advanced NLP techniques you didn't even know you could use. Once you have crossed this step, you will start to invent your own models, your own methods that work best, that work more and more effectively for you, and then eventually you may commercialize them the way I do. If you are interested, it will simply be methods more accurate for the way you naturally communicate and the way you naturally think. Some people who are highly visual thinkers will have more procedures within NLP techniques to trigger the visual system. Everyone will adapt NLP to himself or herself at some level once you have crossed a certain threshold of mastery. And what newcomers miss sometimes is, okay, just what brings the best results, just what works the best from all of those techniques. I just want the thing that right now is going to help me, period. I don't want to go through 2 years of studying this and this and that. Just want, okay, I have this problem, what's going to help me? And this week I have assembled together the 11 best strategies I have developed over the years. Some of them are real inventions, and some of them are not my inventions, but 2 protocols or 2 procedures mixed together, and I only kept what worked best from both procedures, so you don't have to learn everything. You learn a simplified version that is going straight to the point of the hypnotic change you can produce, either on yourself or on the person you work with, without all the fluff that goes around it. The way I have selected those 11 techniques, those 11 strategies, was by remembering specifically what have been the NLP procedures that brought the biggest breakthrough, either in my life when somebody did that to me, or when I did that to myself through some self-hypnosis, or that brought the biggest breakthrough in the life of somebody I helped, or what I have noticed in a client who was working with another coach I knew, for example. I only kept the 11 procedures, actually 10 of them, and the last one was something I added up on top of it for the icing on the cake to some extent. But those 11 strategies are basically what, from my experience, works the best, and those are not exactly what you will find in the books, because they are simplified versions and they don't have like 17 steps you have to memorize heart by heart. It is just, okay, for example, 3 language patterns, you say this phrase, and this phrase, and you wait, you let them process. As simple as that. It doesn't need to be more complex, because the goal is that you only use things so simple, so simplified, that you don't have to think too much during a session. Therefore, you develop the right to, you authorize yourself more easily to improvise and to base your session on one of the strategy that is being shown in this course, and you just allow yourself to add anything else that comes to your mind intuitively. I know for some people it is difficult to let go of the critical, analytical brain and just spontaneously, smoothly wing it with whatever comes to mind. But that is the point. The more you allow yourself to not control everything during a session, the less afraid you will be that a client doesn't respond in the right way, or that the client resists, or stuff like that. And also with yourself. The goal of those 11 procedures is to use them first on yourself and notice which one worked the best on you. And I can assure you there will be at least one out of those 11 that works the best for you. Everyone watching this will have a different favorite procedure. You just keep the one that works the best for you, and then you go apply it with all the clients you work with. Some of them include a guided trance. So during the video I guide your mind through experiencing the mental change. Some of them are only based on language patterns, and some of them are more critical thinking, conscious thinking laid out. This is how it works, this. You just keep the model in mind and improvise, start by the end if you want, whatever, but you have one simple model in mind for where do you want to bring their thoughts to. Those 11 procedures are down below if you want to check them out. You will be my guest, and I know at least 1 or 2 of them will make a massive impact in your life. Again, I have only selected them based on what worked the best on me over 10 years, repeatedly, not just one time, or what worked the best with the clients, on the clients I worked with, and sometimes what I have seen other coaches doing with their clients in turn, and notice the massive shift that happened in the life of that client they were working with. It is down below if you want to check this. Thank you for listening. See you on the other side for the ones who will join me in this adventure, and see you next time.